Welcome everybody to this Sasnet seminar. Today we will focus on Nepal. For those of you who do not know me from before, my name is Lund Lindberg and I work at Sasnet. Our guests, we have two guests here today. Uddhab, that's too hard. Uddhab Pyakurel. No, how do you say it? Yeah. From Kathmandu University, and at present he is a visiting scholar at the University of Copenhagen. No? Aarhus University, but you are based in Copenhagen. Aarhus University based in Copenhagen, where he collaborates with a scholar who has been here. Karen Valentin was here a couple of years ago and visited us here. And she has worked on Nepal for a long time. And then we have Professor Catarina Kinnvall from the Department of Political Science here at Lund University, who will discuss with Uddhab. I would like you to ask you, Uddhab, if you could introduce yourself a little bit more substantial than I am able to do.
Okay.
Because as you see, I already made a mistake in which university in Denmark you are from. So I think it's better if you perhaps could give us some more clues about who you are, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne, and I think it's a great privilege for me to be here with you people, and thanks for accepting this offer and going through my even not a half-good paper, and I wish to have your comments, and thanks a lot for coming all the way, even if you are having very busy time. Myself, Uddhab Pd, I pronounce Uddhab Pd. I don't know much about this meaning. If you ask me what does Uddhab mean, some people quite often ask me, but somebody in India said that Uddhab was the best friend of Lord Krishna. That is how somebody told me. That is what I know about this thing. And obviously, I am now associated with Kathmandu University. I teach political sociology over there. Before that, I was doing my PhD at Jawaharlal Nehru University, that is based in Delhi, New Delhi, India. And I joined Kathmandu University in 2012 May, just after being awarded PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, and my PhD was on Nepali college. That is how it was kind of different than that of I talk today. That is why I myself consider as new in this very migration discipline. And as I told you, this is kind of work in progress. So that is how I seek your comment and etc. And as I told you, this senior professor political science, because I also did masters in political science, then jumped to sociology. That is why I think it is quite relevant to have your comments, and I look forward to this very comment. I think that is all about this introduction, madam.
That's fine. But, did you mention the topic of the today's seminar?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's there. I think. Yeah, because while we were discussing about this seminar, I myself and sorry to say that Linda is not here. Linda communicated a bit, and recently she, together with him, traveled to Nepal, and before that also we communicated. And eventually the title for me was this Governance of Nepal's Labour Migration, and it was by and large, even if they chose this title, but it was by and large my project. That is how I think I said yes to talk about this thing. And as I told earlier that it is work in progress, many things has to be done. I just wrote my random thoughts and tried to build up this argument based on my field. That is what is my paper, and I tried this not as paper but try to have a monograph. That is why you could see a couple of sections which I have to be filled up and given a shape. That is how I could say, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm new in this, that is why your comments will be made more welcome to make my arguments. So having said that, I'll start my this presentation, and the title is Governance of Nepal's Labour Migration. Objective is, I think I'll have to talk about a bit this, how this very idea came to in my mind. We are part of this 3 university collaboration, and we are given one grant by DENIDA, and that is called Nepal on the Move. On that we have 7 different themes we have chosen, and out of them is this governance of Nepal's labour migration, and other 6 themes are, as far as I can recall, one is on internal migration, that is looking at by Vinayak, sitting right over there. He's writing his PhD thesis on that very internal migration. And there is a returnee aspect we are looking after. There is this British Gorkhas aspect we are looking after. There is Nepalese in coal mines in northeast India, and again educational returnees, and what was the last one?
Religious aspect of
religious migration of Tamang community as well. So these are the 7 different aspects we are working on this very, in a way, large project that is called Nepal on the Move, and I am part of this. That is why this objective is to understand the concept of governance while discussing foreign labour migration, and also to understand the governance system of labour migration is practiced by the Nepali state through various institutions on the basis of rules, regulations and law, and to explore the interface gap between system and stakeholders' experience while dealing with the system. Data collection and methodology, I use both primary and secondary data, and obviously secondary data are based on books, journals, articles and etc. And I took a couple of in-depth interviews of policymakers and also interviews of migrants, returnees and even aspirants. And I visited offices, I observed the process and etc. These are the methodologies I use in this very research. So if I talk about outline of the paper, I try to initiate with the understanding of governance of labour migration globally. Then I went through how we contextualize it in Nepali context, then what are the procedures, especially Nepal follow, especially to those who are migrating to Gulf countries, and obviously preliminary findings, and I in this paper, because as I told you, it is not even a half cooked, and in this shape I talk about how this different way of understanding how there is kind of different way of understanding and kind of this it has helped in creating more problems. That is how I try to focus on, and overcome. These are the outlines. And if I try to go through this, and in the initial section, I try to go through this understanding of governance of labour migration, and in that I try to explore the very concept of governance, who used, when and why this concept came into existence, and my argument would be it is very old concept in Europe but very new in South Asia, at least in Nepal, and the concept how it traveled to migration studies, that is also I try to mention in my paper, and there is debate about global migration governance and international migration management. So I try to engage with these 2 binary opposition in a way, but interchangeably used while talking about migration governance and existing limitation of both the concepts. For example, it has neglected the state as main actor. It has focused only the labour migration policy of the receiving countries. It excludes sending country immigration regime and neglects South-South migration. That is what I deal with this very initial section of my paper. So while talking about Nepal's labor migration, I think these are the overviews I have to mention. For example, migration is very old phenomenon in Nepal, and I think thanks to this open border, earlier we had open border with Tibet, now we have open border with India. That is how Nepalese quite often migrated and used to migrate for their bread and butter, and then sometimes it is seasonal, sometimes it is almost semi-permanent or something like this. But and later on, once this World War started, then Nepalese joined British Army because British India was our neighbor. That is how we tried to deal with this British India, and we joined British Army, and eventually our army, this British Army, served for Brunei, Singapore, even Hong Kong, and etc. That is how it was the case. And eventually, even just before India, this British left India, we had tripartite agreement with India, British, and Nepal, and that allowed Nepalese to serve not only in British but also Indian Army. That is what is our tradition. And formal labor migration, in a way, migration formally started in 1980s, and it was not, especially it was started, people started going to Japan, Singapore, USA, etc. But in the late 90s, 1980s, when this Gulf also tried to liberalize its policy and try to have foreign labors, then this migration to Gulf started. And along with that very aspect, then we also, Nepal also tried to deal it in an official manner. Otherwise, we didn't have any law and policy to deal with this labor migration, and it was, in fact, personal thing before that. There was no state law to regulate or say something or this and that. And if you talk today, then this is the latest data. 1,689 Nepalese per day take permission from the government authority to go abroad. And even in last month, I had a data. In last month also, the figure is somehow similar, maybe one number less or two, and this number is kind of consistent for at least 2 years. And somebody was calculating it the other day, and it is almost, you see, how many? 616,000 plus. And then out of them, obviously there are these people are those who also came back and go again. In fact, re-entry also has been included in this number, but out of that, almost 453,000 are the first time to go. And as I told you, the number is consistent for 2 years, and it has excluded those who are in India, who are migrated in India, and those who migrated via India in a way illegally or undocumented migrant, we could say. So you could find out that the number is huge, and somebody was asking if this continue and within 7 years there would be no one in Nepal. That is what he was telling to us. So this is the situation, and as I told you, it's a 2 years phenomenon continuously. This 1,700 plus per day, but still I don't think that the scenario is decreasing. And this very recent data from the passport department also verify this. For example, per day 4,000 passports are being issued by the government of Nepal, and obviously there are a couple of hundreds students also who wanted to go abroad, but by and large they are the experienced to go abroad for the labor migration. And surprisingly, we're talking with Anna earlier, in Kerala it was almost every household. But in Nepal, at least, we are fortunate enough that we are having at least half of the family who were are having someone abroad. So we are fortunate in that. Not like Kerala, but we are towards that very direction. As I mentioned, this even if it was very old phenomenon, Nepali government started formalizing this very process quite recently. It was only in 1984-85. First, this ministry was introduced, and even this law in the name of Foreign Employment Act was introduced in 1985 only. And even after that, you could see, even if Act came into existence in 1895, but the rule came only after 14 years. So you must, you must be knowing the fact that law, by and large, won't talk about nitty-gritty and etc. Law is kind of abstract, that has to be accomplished through rules and etc. to further processing, and rules came very late. That is how I could say that Nepal started this governance or management of labor migration in very lately in a way. And then onwards, if you see, then kind of consistently Nepali state try to deal with this very aspect. For example, laws, ministries also, the name of the ministry is quite often changed, laws are being amended and new laws are being introduced, and even policies and etc. And if you try to see the direction of policies and programs, then you find you could easily find that Nepal is towards very labor migration friendly country. For example, earlier it was having very restrictive regime. Even to issue passport was very difficult earlier, before 90, but nowadays from each and every district you can have passport, and we have this even urgency. If you are having passport in urgency manner, you need passport in urgency manner, there is option. And if you pay more, then you can have passport in 7 days. These are the things Nepal started doing now, and in a way it is facilitating this labor migration, I could say. That is how you see from restrictive regime to it come to economic imperative regime in a way, because it tried to even mention in Nepali budget system and even prioritize them by giving this loan and etc. That is how. And along with this, now even while talking about labor migration, Nepali state, at least law and policy, even try to talk about social protection and rights. For example, if you talk about this 1999 regulation, then it has talked more about this pro-poor policy, foreign labor migration, and even quotas for Janjati, Dalit, and women and etc. But as I told you, I'll talk about this, how this is discriminatory to women in a way later on. So, for example, if we follow this Foreign Employment Act 2007, and it has come up with this rights-based approach, but and even it has removed this some discriminatory clauses related to women. Earlier, even to issue passport for a woman in Nepal, either she has to have guarantee either by her husband side or by her mother side. It was kind of thing before, and then this very act in 2007 relaxed this very clauses and even removed this discriminatory clauses related to women. But in practice, even today there are a lot many these bans and restrictions that I'll talk later on. So, and recently even Nepal has introduced some safety mechanisms, for example, orientation before going to the labor migration, insurance, and labor decks in the airport, and labor attaché in the destiny, migrant receiving country, and welfare fund is also there in Nepal. So these are some protective mechanisms, safety mechanism Nepal has introduced recently along with this act. So these are the formal things, and once we come to implementation part, I think we're having a bit complicated and even difficult scenario, I could say, or disappointing scenario. For example, I show some of the pictures. This is the picture of Department of Foreign Employment. It's nearby Nepal's only the international airport, and you could see the crowd. These are the aspirants to have a final sticker from the labor department, and it's inside the compound, and you could see many things happening outside the compound, and while you see this kind of crowd, then you could sense that there is kind of problem, even if it's one of the biggest issue. For example, and this line is the line who are there just to pay 1,000 rupees to have a sticker. And then within that very premise, even if this much crowd is there, there is only a bank counter, and it also serves only up to 2 p.m. and people wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and come here early in the morning to deposit fees for that. That is what is this crowd. So again, this is just in front of this office. This office is fenced, like you could see over there, with this very, to secure. I don't know whether how secure it is, but people feel like it's fenced office, but the crowd, you could see, it's a small road towards this department, and you could imagine what kind of crowd and what kind of procedures being done within this very building. So you could see even people are in rush, people try to, service seekers try to manipulate through windows and some photographs you could see people are hanging up to the windows and etc. just to make sure that their documents are being proceeded for their work or something like that. And these are the photographs of this labor department, and this is the photograph of passport office. As I told you, per day 4,000 passports are being issued from this very office, and according to DG, they have to deal 6,000 people a day. 2,000 are new applicants, 2,000 are those who are there to receive passport, and 2,000 are those who are there to inquire about their pending work and sometimes inquire about their procedure and etc. And I met a couple of people. For example, this is my one of the guys was saying, this is my 4th day in a row. In all 3 days, I arrived at around 6 to 7 a.m. in the morning and had to return back because the queue was too long to wait for. So today I came at 3 a.m. in the morning and got a token number 621. Even if he came around 3, he at least could secure number 621, and then you could see who could be the first. Maybe who came there around 12 o'clock, or maybe who could spend night over there. That is how. And then he was fortunate enough to have this 621 number, because at least they deal with 2,000 people. That is why this day, after 4 days, I think he is happy to have this, at least this token, and then he will apply for the passport. That is what is the photograph. And this is also from the passport office, and they were saying that, for example, per day 2,562 applications were accepted. It is called by one of the, I talked to one of security persons. So if we talk about, as I mentioned, I by and large dealt about this understanding of this policymakers and aspirants and migrants. And if we talk about policymakers understanding, their understanding, they try to say that they couldn't do much due to these 3 factors. One, they cite is corruption. Second, they cite as resource constraint. I have my own argument. That is why I put this triple word over there. I'll talk about this later on. And again, they talk about instability, and they talk about this often transfer of government staffs, policy change, no official memory because staff has been changed and there is no policy at all, and etc. And having narrated these three aspects, their suggestion would be, they say that they try to avoid direct interaction of the client and government officer. That is how, if they do it, then they can decrease corruption. That is what they say. And again, they say that if there is political stability, then we could do better. And the third thing they refer is rigid laws and policies by amending old or adding new one. They wanted to go for rigid laws. That is what is their understanding. I'll discuss it about a bit later on. And if you talk about response of the migrants and aspirants, I try to narrate a couple of stories over there. I'll come back with the story over here as well. But for commoners and this clients, in a way, they feel like there is no law at all. There is no policy, there is no law at all. Brokers can manage things at any cost in Nepal. And that means deal under the table, bribe, and duplicate or fake documents, etc. They can make things by doing this jasaripan. This is Nepali law. And the law functions through and by money. That is what this experience and others say. So I have a couple of cases over here. For example, Dinesh, he is 25 years old. He was experienced. Now he is in Qatar. He flew to Qatar, I think, December 16th. And his case was, in a way, interesting while talking about this Nepal's labor migration, because in a way, this policy makers say that if we have rigid law, then we can control this mishappening, mismanagement, and etc. But see the case. Even if he was given interview in one post, his visa came. His visa came for another post, and eventually it was delayed due to the department. But eventually this manpower could get through, and he could fly with this very visa. This is how this case is important. For example, what this manpower ED stated to me was, we get ED approval from the department in the past in similar cases, but this time they kept my case in pending. I am trying hard to clear the document by using our channel, but it seems that we have to wait sometimes. I know that it will be done once the fight between two government organizations, Department of Labor and this Corruption Control Authority, is settled, and department people returning work in normalcy. And eventually, whatever he said, after a couple of days, I could know from Dinesh that he was told to be ready to go abroad, and without changing anything, he could fly to the Qatar, and that is how the flexible implementation process we are having. And I try to even follow this manpower and this client relation, and this manpower follow government rules by mentioning that every manpower have this citizens charter, where they mention that those who want to go to Qatar has to pay only 20,000 rupees. And this Dinesh is the one who paid 80,000 rupees, and his colleagues who flew together with him could pay even more than 150,000. And I try to understand this very aspect, asking if you are complained to the department, what happens? And this manpower guy was very assertive to say that no, nothing will happen. Only the guy who is ready to fly will be disturbed. Yes, I can't proceed this forward, but so what? This is the client who is suffering, and this government people know that I can't let somebody fly within this 20,000. I have to pay this much over there. This, that is why this is only the provision. and this is for the sake of showing, and government people know that is why we are doing this. And I even try to go through what kind of document they produce while receiving this 80,000. And this Dinesh is the one who was not given even a receipt. He was asked whether he needs receipt, and he asked for 80,000 receipt for 80,000, and this manpower said that no, I can't give 80,000 because legally I can issue only 20,000 receipt. If you are happy to have it, I can issue, otherwise I can't. That is how it works. And it has lot many things to do in the days to come. For example, if Dinesh could not work and he was not allowed to work over there according to the conditions he signed, and if he come back, then this money is related to his compensation. And if it is 20,000, and he will get back only 20,000, and he will lose 60,000 because there is no receipt. That is how you see this rule and implementation things are different over there in Nepal. That is why I think this story is quite interesting while talking about this manpower thing. And case 2, again, Deepak, he is 26, the aspirant to go abroad, and he is the one who was sent visa by his brother. And there are a lot many research literatures about this, and I think this is quite interesting phenomenon in South. At least I think I understand South. We have this very extended family to support if something happens, and this is the case for migration as well, labor migration as well. For example, by and large, labor migration occurs in Nepal through this family linkage and even this linkage with the neighborhood. For example, if somebody local elite, you could say, by and large it is proceeded by local elites, and that is how he was fortunate enough to have his brother over there in Qatar, and he sent visa to him. And if he was allowed to use that very visa, he could fly to Qatar only with his ticket. But he was not, because recently there was policy change according to which one can't have one can't go through individually unless he or she is tied up with a manpower company. And in this case, even if his brother sent visa, but he had to go through this manpower, and for that he had to pay 15,000 rupees, and that is how this case become very important. And according to them, this provision was changed not due to other things, but due to this campaign of the manpower company. They wanted to make money out of whatever circumstances. That is how, and eventually we have this manpower leader as labor minister. That is how he had to solve this manpower agencies than that of clients. That is what people blame for this very change of the policy. And even if very many reports said that this very migration through relatives and etc. is safer than that of agencies, because at least we have to understand our society differently. For us, I think for people like, for Nordic people, it is very trustworthy if there is institutional dealing, because institution is trustworthy over there. But in our part, it's not the case. Institution, for example, I don't know whether I have been dealt with my own government. People won't trust government, even local body. That is why forget about this manpower. And even research said that even if manpower cheats people, and even they can't punish people. And for example, there was one report according to which there were 207 complaints registered against manpower agencies, but no one, even not a single case was forwarded by the department. So for them, if there is relative, then their parents can push him to pay this back if something happened, and social prestige comes into existence because he is relatively the leader of this very society. That is how I think they trust person than that of the institution. And but our legal system try to destroy this very system. That is what they are talking about this thing. And case 3, this is again Qatar migration. A friend who was working in Qatar returned to Nepal during the Sasnet festival, and in between he had to change his visa, and he had to bribe 35,000 to arrange his exit from the airport to fly back. I didn't, he was narrating this story. I didn't trust him, but eventually he from the airport called me and said that, you see, I could make it. So it was, a surprising thing, because even if you talk about rigid law and etc., but he could manage if he bribed people like this. And for him, I had no option except to deal with this agent. I was granted visa, I agreed to join job next week, and I had to make it in any case, and I am happy to pay 35,000 for the work. That is what he stated, and eventually he went. Once, and I tried to understand how it works, and then the agent who managed to make this happening stated that once the file comes to them, they initially see the documents. If the file follows proper documents, they approve. If not, they check whether the name of the client is in the list. That list is different list, whether they are taking money out of that. That is the list. And it is the list which is made out of deal, circulated by friends, colleagues, and etc. Then they forward the file if the client made a deal and his or her name was in the list, or say no if it is not the case. This is the case from Department of Labor Migration. This agent who made this happening narrative, I quote. And this is all 3 cases I talk about. While they deal with in a domestic offices, and this is the case we talk about this labor attache, embassy, this and that in the receiving country. And this Purushottam, 33 years old guy, he's skilled labor over there. He's not semi-skilled or even on-skilled labor, but for him it was very difficult to even collect his passport. He applied in November 24th, 2015, and he could collect his passport only in April 22nd, 2014 he applied, and he could collect his passport after he visited first time on the December 8th, 2014. And he narrated, I have I think 2-page long narratives in his paper. I tried to cursor. And then interestingly, this last para may be of the interesting. His 4th visit was quite interesting. 3 times he went and come back because he had pressure to work. That is how he just went. And once he didn't see his passport, and he just came. And he went there because his name was there in the website mentioning that your passport has been issued and you can collect. But 3 times he couldn't succeed. And 4th time when he took time and went there to collect his passport in any case, at least if not then to know why my passport is not coming, then he was suggested by one officer. This is very interesting. For example, Sapkota first saw the bundle of passport, since he replied saying that within 2 minutes, okay, before that I think, this is very interesting. The officer, once Purushottam narrated the whole story, the second secretary, he has mentioned even name, his name is Nitish Sapkota, replied saying that there are many people with same name, and the name published in the web page might be of another Purushottam. And he suggested resubmitting the application saying that that is the easiest solution. After 4 months, officer an officer in the embassy could suggest a client. And then he, in fact, he didn't have any option. That is why he bought a new application form, paid for that, filled up, and he queued to submit it. While submitting, the junior fellow of the embassy suggested him, oh no, it's very unfortunate where your passport went. Even after 4 months you are resubmitting, but don't forget to follow up for the old passport. That is what was suggested by junior officer. Then again, after submitting this application, he went to the receptionist and requested to check it again, and eventually he went to the room where passport lies and he could find out the passport. And the officer who suggested was in front of this passport. And eventually, eventually he could find out this passport right over there. But the suggestion were this kind of thing. That is why this case, even if we talk about this attaché, embassy and etc., kind of governance we could assure for the clients is kind of thing. That is how I think this case is important. While talking about these things, I have narrated a couple of findings. For example, if we talk about policy, by and large, I mean, according to my own analysis, policy and programs are for the sake of saving the face. For example, whatever policies we come up with, we say that we have policy, you didn't follow, that is why you are not entitled to have this and that. For example, if Dinesh, for example, who paid 80,000 and unfortunately he had to come back and go to the ministry for the compensation, and this very officer would say, oh, why didn't you have this receipt? I can't help you because legally you have to have receipt. That is what they would say. That is why this very policy is there just to avoid kind of governance we are talking, just to avoid, or just for the sake of this thing. For example, this ban of independent channels, because people are seeking employment overseas, and information according to this research, 66% of the people go abroad via relatives, and only 10.09% follow this agency while going abroad. But having this very fact, knowing this very fact, we try to ban this very provision. That is how people are annoyed. And for example, as I mentioned, what kind of support we are getting out of state and out of this relatives and etc. For example, who provides loan for the aspirants? This is relatives and extended family, not the government, not the bank, even if we have provision. And that is why, for example, for the documentation, who help them to issue the passport? Always government officers will try to make money out of this job they are assigned, and there is some local elite which make this easy for the commoners. That is why I think this support also is by and large from the relatives and local agents, and by and large it is family affairs. And for example, even for compensation, as I told you, if you go to file the case, and earlier we mentioned out of 207 cases, no case was forwarded. And if it is local agent, then as I told you, he could be caught in the village before the mass. And this is kind of same for him. That is why people feel secure to lend money to somebody in the village than that to the manpower agency or something like this. But forgetting these very facts, we try to change this. We try to ban this. And by and large, most of the policy changes are due to the specific event. For example, if something mishappening happened in Iraq, for example, we had an accident, I think when it was 2011, 12 Nepalese were killed in Iraq. Then all of a sudden the policy was just to ban Nepalese to go to the Iraq. And today if you issue a passport for labor migration, there is a stamp. permitted except Iraq or something like this has been stamped in each and every passport. But even today, lot many Nepalese are going over there. And then if we talk about this for the sake of saving the face, government know this very fact. But again, if the issue come as compensation, then they say that no, you are not permitted. Why did you go? That is how we try to do it. And then obviously ad hoc other thing. For example, I'll narrate this women's case, maybe next slide. Yeah, see the case of women, and these all are event triggered decisions within how many years? 18 years, 6 bans and lifts in between, and restrictions, bans, quite often ban, removal of ban, then again some restrictions, and then that is how it is being done. And by and large, these are this event triggered kind of policy change without having proper study or etc. So and obviously again without backup policy. For example, nowadays women are not allowed to go to Kuwait, Qatar, and etc. for housemaid work, and women under 30 are not allowed to go for any work. Women above 30 can go for other works, but not for household work. And then household work is banned for the women to go to Gulf countries. But many women make it, and number is being increased, and we couldn't deal with this aspiration. We try to impose this law, and just to say that we have law. Why did you go? And if you follow back up, for example, while I was coming to Denmark, I met one lady and I interviewed her in the airport. She's there as a housemaid. She took this illegal channel. She went to Delhi, took flight to Gulf. Now she's in Kuwait, I think. And I try to follow how it was being treated by Nepali government. And even if she went there illegally, and I asked whether you again came back via India, she said, no, I came back directly to Kathmandu. And she was given this exit stamp. And again she is flying directly from Kathmandu to go there, even if it is called illegal. So that is how I find it. There is no backup plan. For example, if you treat something as illegal, your backup also could stop them not to be the part of this very process. But it is not the case. For example, for example, I narrated this Purushottam's case as well. Even if he flew illegally by paying 35,000, the next day if you want to come, he can easily come. So in a way, it's not policy for the implementation. It's not policy with backup. It's just ad hoc policy, just to say that we have policy, without any follow-up plan. That is what I say. And once it is the case, then obviously you find a lot many loopholes to deal with, and brokers and bureaucrats are having money out of this very process. I think we have narrated this, and by and large it has some ideological stance also. For example, if there is Maoist government and if something happened outside against this woman, then they will just ban it. And if there is Congress government, liberal one, and if there is women's pressure saying that it is discriminatory, and they just lift the ban. And again Maoist government, they will just ban it without dealing the root cause. That is what is being done over there. That is how this very thing is there. And I think while talking about policy, I think we have to deal with policy makers as well. And as I told you, policy makers are by and large guided by the political ideology. And I try to even have on the table to state what political party manifesto said in my paper. I didn't bring over here, but I hinted earlier, there are two contradictory opinions inside country. For example, left in Nepal, especially UML and Maoist, the second and third largest party, say that this labor migration is temporary phenomenon. We should not deal it as if it is permanent. And Congress, in a way, is liberal, saying that no, because it is happening, so we have to have at least mechanism to deal with. That is how they try to even introduce some policy. And once you try to say it is temporary phenomenon, and obviously you can't go for the long-term policy. I think that is where this dilemma is there about these policy makers and etc. That is why they couldn't prioritize this labor migration. And once you don't prioritize, then you don't feel like you can have experts on this, you can go for long-term policy, you can go for this and that. That is why I think it is kind of mess. And even while talking about this, I think Nepalese policymakers have kind of, I think in a way, dilemma or lack of understanding, I could say. I think labor today is kind of strength instead of weakness. But they feel like, oh no, every day 400,000 people are coming out and we have to settle them, how to create employment for them. That is why they are very shy to stop this very process or try to understand and manage this very process. That is why I think there is problem. Again, they talk about lack of resource. For example, the crowd I have shown earlier in passport department and labor department, I don't think that that should be the case. And there would be no lack of resource. For example, Nepal is selling this passport. I think this is the world's expensive passport. We are taking 10,000 rupees out of one single passport. That is $100 nowadays, almost 100 euros. And out of that we are making quite big amount of money. But you could see the crowd. Why couldn't we try to introduce it in a different manner? We try to manage it in a different manner. Same the case for this labor department. Everyone has to pay 1,000 rupees and the money is dumped over there. In a way, huge amount of money in the name of this fund, labor fund is there, but they are not utilizing this, and quite often they are mentioning that we are having lack of resource. And even they say that this is an issue of unemployment. I don't think so. It is, I think for me, it is lack of dignity of work. It's, we were discussing earlier, in at least global south, I think we couldn't dignify our work. That is why people try to escape their own locality, go a bit far away and do the same job. They are very hesitant to work, do the same job in their locality. For example, she was narrating, many Kerala people come to Gulf for work, and the similar kind of job in Kerala is taken care by Bengalis and Nepalese. That is the case. And I think in that, it is not the issue of unemployment, that is the issue of lack of dignity of work. We have to understand. That I think my policymaker won't try to understand. And I think we even, that is why, unless you understand this very problem, and you can't stop this aspiration. It is kind of very aspiration. For example, this Dinesh, I'm in touch with him, even after he flew, and he's now frustrated within 2 months. He couldn't have more than 5,000 salary, and in the first month, his half of the salary was cut because he couldn't properly make this account, and eventually it was this account was in loss. That is why this money was cut by the owner, and he ended up with only 200 or something Qatar here. And if this government follow people like him, and I think next day will come back, if we try to follow them and try to sell this very phenomenon to those who are aspirant again. But we didn't have mechanism to follow this very process. That is why Dinesh can't come back feeling like I have no place, I have to struggle over there. And the aspirants always see this very rosy picture. No, even if I talk about this thing, for example, yesterday we were talking with one Nepali guy in Denmark. He was saying, why people are coming, I don't understand. I suggest everyone not to come. But he won't believe by other experience, saying that you are there, that is why you are talking. That is the phenomenon. That is why I think it has to be, and government is very silent over there, just to deconstruct this very promoted aspiration. There is no attempt at all. Government is posing very rosy picture in the name of remittance or this and that. That is why I think this aspiration is quite strong even today, and I think that is how it is very difficult. And as I mentioned, and once you don't understand properly about this phenomenon, and you are having an inferiority complex to deal with the receiving country, that is what is happening. For example, if we push Qatar, then Qatar may say no the next day, and I will be in trouble because all youth will circle me and try to even create problem. That is what is the complex my policymakers are having. And as I told you, if they consider it as strength, leverage is strength, and even try to share with the countries, the labor sending countries, and deal with together with the sending country, I think it would be better. For example, there are mechanisms, for example, South Asia and etc. But they instead of dealing with them, they compete each other. That is what is the problem. So
I think maybe we can start give the word to Katarina soon, and then so we will also leave the floor open for
maybe last one slide.
Yeah, one slide.
Okay. So I think these are the things I talk about this policy makers and policy, and even for experience, I think I could find a couple of problems or dilemma in a way. For example, those experience also have sort of dilemma in a way, because on the one hand they don't follow kind of new mechanism government introduced, saying that no we have tradition. On the other, they also have aspiration to be modern. They criticize government and etc., saying that we don't have law. And on the one hand they follow tradition, on the other they wanted to have new law, and without following this. That is, I think, dilemma migrants and aspirants also have. That is why I think even migrants and aspirants are, in a way, instrumental in weakening this very system. That is what I have to say. I'll discuss more once there is query and answer. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for this interesting and a little bit depressing presentation, I think. So, Katarina, we will leave the word to you, and then after that we will open up the floor.
Okay. How do you prefer me to do it? Do you want me to make all the comments, or should we have more of a discussion? Which do you prefer? A discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. First I just want to say that I do find your discussion of migration governance very interesting, especially the fact that you focus on South-South, on the kind of sending societies rather than the South-North, the receiving societies. And I also think that your paper provides a very clear overview of the ways in which Nepal's migration governance has changed, especially legally, from a focus of this restrictive regime approach to a more economic approach, to one that is now focused on social protection of rights. And also how the migration discourse has kind of moved from regulation to facilitation. So I think that's very clear throughout your paper. But what you also show, of course, and that's the kind of content of your paper, is how implementation has largely failed, which you attribute to corruption, to resource constraints, to instability in terms of changes in governments, regimes, but also changes in staff within those places. And I think you also show, and you didn't talk so much about that in your talk, but how these kind of failures have resulted in local sub-agents being more important than government agencies, and how they provide a number of and how you provide a number of case studies that shows the difficulties individuals have in gaining these, like you talked about the passport, the visas, the documents, and how to make it possible for them to move. So I think there is a really interesting argument in this paper. So I had some questions or some comments, I guess. I mean, and one is, I guess, more theoretical. I mean, coming from political science, we're always theoretical. Then I was wondering how you would describe your kind of main contribution in theoretical terms. Are you trying to make a contribution to the governance literature? And if you are, and I want to expand this a little bit before I let you in, what do you think your main contribution is? And also, what does the focus on a kind of south-south approach differ from a south-north approach? I mean, does it say anything else than that it's a difference between focusing on the sending countries and receiving countries? Does it say anything beyond, that kind of concerns? And I also wanted, and then I will let you in, and that's kind of theoretical. I mean, your argument is basically that the governance literature has focused on, moved towards kind of a global governance, focused on the subnational level, on the regional level, local level, the move to the global level. And in that kind of focus, they forgot the state, I mean, in some sense. And as you do that, you talk about, you use Mark Bevier's, for instance, discussion on governance. But what you don't do, and which I actually expected you to do, I guess, was that to move from Mark Bevier's discussion of governance to his discussion of governmentality, which I think really moves into, I mean, that's the kind of the sovereign, the state who is able to still, within a kind of more global world, we still have, the state as an actor in terms of using kind of governmentality approach. So I was just wondering if you had gone into that kind of literature, would I be able to provide you with a more theoretical and critical approach to your topic? I think I leave it here for you to talk first. I have one more theoretical question, and then I'll move to the more empirical.
Okay. I think, you're right. Because, in a way, I try to use this Mark Bevier's literature, and I didn't go through this governmentality. I only went through this governance concept and etc. and how we travel up to this migration literature, and I even try to engage with governance of labor migration versus management of labor migration kind of thing. And then, as I told you, I try to point out a couple of points. For example, to what has been focused by both the aspects today. By and large, they talk about south to north migration, and then you asked me how you differentiate between south to south migration and south to north.
Or what the contribution
I think
theoretical terms in some sense.
Yeah, I think empirically, if you say, for example, south to south migration is quite unique than that of south to north migration. For example, if somebody from Nepal comes to Denmark or Sweden, he or she has a feeling to stay over here, overstay, or sometimes they go for PR and etc. That's why, number one, they won't remit much money back to Nepal. They try to collect over here so that they can go for PR and etc. This is number one. Number two, they, at least till today, they have chance to be here as resident, and they have all rosy pictures. That is why they try to be here. But as far as south-south migration is concerned, this is not the case. For example, Nepalese in Qatar never think of staying or applying PR in Qatar. They feel like culturally also, they feel like, no, I can't stay over here. Weather-wise also, they won't prefer to be there. Oh, it's terrible weather. That is why, by and large, whatever they earn, the next day this money go to Nepal. They remit money. I mean, not Nepal, at least south to south phenomenon is like this. They, by and large, money go back. They won't have aspiration to be there, and they won't even try to stay longer because maybe very rigid legal system. For example, if you overstay in Qatar, you may be imprisoned. Even in Singapore, for example, until recently, in Asian countries, even in Korea, they would be imprisoned. By and large, they would be imprisoned, and then
then deported to this thing. This was not the case till recently, at least in Europe. You could apply as asylum seeker, you could illegally stay. These are the cases. I think these are the things which by and large were not there. And while talking about this theoretical aspect, while dealing about this management or governance, about this south-north, by and large this north, this very aspect was dominated by this north literature, saying that how this illegal or undocumented or this migration has been dealt by introducing new laws, policies, or etc. by the north. This very aspect of sending country has been neglected by this. That is what was my thing, and obviously, yes, I'll be very happy to go through with this governmentality literature, which I have not.
I mean, it's just a more
through.
Foucauldian
Yeah,
approach
right.
to
Thank you so much.
power and. But actually, I can follow up on that because I think, I mean, I certainly think it makes sense, you know, focusing on the regime and focusing on what's being done in Nepal. But I think also, to some extent, perhaps what you do then is then you may not focus on, you know, differences in terms of, you know, what difference does it make in terms of where these people go if they go to the Middle East? Does it make any difference on the regime societies, or the host society, receiving societies, different kind of approach to giving visas? So I was wondering what would happen if you extended it a little bit and also took into account the receiving societies, and then I'm talking about not the north but the south receiving societies, Middle East or Malaysia. Is there a difference in some sense depending on where we go? So I think by focusing only on the state, perhaps then we make the opposite mistake by, in that case, not taking into account the more global context. And also perhaps not taking into account enough the local and regional context. I mean, because like I said, I thought that's really interesting when you talk about the sub-agents, you know, the agents in the local villages, they know everybody in the village, they can't really, they can't be too corrupted in a sense, because then they will suffer for it later. And just to focus on the state, you know, on the state level, I was just wondering if you then, per definition, in some sense, neglect these other regions, I mean the regional level, local level, but also the global level and the receiver society. And maybe that's the larger project that you would like to. But that was my next kind of comment.
You're right, and I'll add this phenomenon of receiving country, and I think in the beginning I tried to deal a bit how this very demand has been created in the receiving country and etc. And obviously one section I think I could add other mechanism or something like this.
I think also that what you were saying now towards the end of your talk, I mean the circular migration is really interesting. I mean the fact that you have other people doing work, you don't want to do that work at home, you are prepared to do it elsewhere, and that in itself leads to a kind of circular migration. And what does that do to the implementation of the migration regime, so to speak, that circular migration? I also think, I mean, that brings me more to the empirical. That's if, I mean, you list a number of implementation problems that are not worked in the Nepalese case. I mean, basically that's what you do. But you say perhaps less, I mean, I think you say less about the attempts to deal with these failures. I mean, you talk a little bit about, you know, that maybe preventing these applicants from meeting the officer face-to-face, but are there any more kind of structural discussions about how to deal with these failures? And also, are there, for example, any kind of guest workers associations within Nepal that tries to challenge the problem of corruption, the problem of resource constraint, the problem of instability? Are there any attempts made by the government, for instance, to include these local sub-agents in government policies? Is there any role for the media in all this? I mean, what kind of attention does these kind of failures get in the media? And I can see that attention is given to media attention if something happens in the receiver country. It seems like, I mean, like the women the acts you put up, it's quite obvious that things that happens abroad has consequences for the kind of policies that are being. But this media, even attention on the difficulties and the failure in implementation, that had any role to play in addressing these failures in these policies. And also, I'm not completely sure about what the role was between the manpower agencies and the government. I mean, you have some slides toward the end where you can try to describe the process, but how is that kind of process institutionalized within the system, the manpower agencies compared to? I mean, do they have to stand in queue, for instance, in the mornings, or do they have special channels into the departments? So I was wondering what are all these aspects or these other alternative associations or media or manpower agencies, do they at all challenge, the implementation failure? And if they do, how do they do it, I guess?
Yeah, I think this circular migration or whatever, I think I'll deal while talking about root causes, and then I have something to say on that very thing, and I'll add this. And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenge before this government to at least decrease this very aspiration. Otherwise, this aspiration will increase and this thing there. And yeah, in a way, for example, the reference they have made, I think I have a problem even in that. Where they are talking, I think, this government institutions who talk about this mechanism to control corruption, saying that we should not let client and officer meet. I think that is problematic for me. I didn't have time to elaborate, that is why it was there. In later slides I had something to say. Because Nepal, they have to, I think, they have to understand our own flavor of the society. For example, this is Nepal, and we still have this very organic kind of solidarity or organic family structure, and by and large, how could it be possible just to distance kind of thing? And I think that will create more problem. And while talking about this, how could you instrumentalize this? Whether this, for example, they are having very modern thinking, but forgetting this very given reality in the society. That is why I think I sense this is very problematic. For example, even today, this client and this officer are not quite often meeting. For example, there is always somebody to bridge between them, commoners. As I told you, a commoner, a labor migrant who is aspiring to go to the Qatar, I tell you, 60% of them won't be able to go to the village office just to have this recommendation for the passport. They try to request their own uncle or senior or local elite. Eventually he work as in a way broker or what you say. He or she even today, because we have this phenomenon also, lot many C's are also involved in dealing with these migration aspects. For example, even in Delhi you could meet lot many women doing these local agents kind of thing, just to traffic women abroad, even to traffic men abroad. Even in Delhi, they are doing this thing. That is why this is not only he phenomenon in Nepal, this is she phenomenon as well. And that is why you see, even they won't go to this village secretary. And if they go directly to the village secretary will ask additional amount. That is why they feel like they should not go and forget about this high level, this ministerial position. And how could they go up to the Kathmandu? I being a one district guy, for me to go to Kathmandu is costly, this, that, everything. That is why they won't meet. And even today they are talking this. This is only for the sake of saying something, I think. There is no logic at all to subscribe this very policy. That is why I think this is problematic. But there are a lot many other things. For example, media is playing quite a big role in a way. But you see, we even neglect our media report. For example, lot many media reports come, but we could at least even world could even wake up once a report published by Guardian. You must have read this report. Before also there are a lot many reports, and then my ambassador to Qatar opened her mouth up and said that Qatar is in a way open jail. She was existing ambassador, she made this statement, and she was then called back by Nepali government because of the protest by the Qatar. And the next month, Guardian report proved whatever she was saying. And then only this lot many attentions were there to how to deal with, and Qatar was also in a defensive manner then onwards. So in a way, we don't consider our media report also, but eventually that works. For example, whatever I narrated about this women's thing, this vulnerability and exploitation were exposed by media. That is how government tried to deal with, but the dealing mechanism is absolutely incorrect. Instead of dealing through different ways, they try to ban, they try to impose discriminatory laws, and according to migration governance literature, the very strong argument by scholars is that if you impose rigid laws and people, aspirant will have more resistance power, and they go beyond whatever strong argument you make, they go beyond and beyond and beyond. That is the case. That is why this very rigid policy is not the solution. But Nepal government still feel like, oh, if we try to ban, then that's all right. But it didn't work. Lot many, I think more than 700 times. I think, for example, officially maybe 70,000 they talk about women in Gulf, but informal data says that hundreds of thousands women are there, and it is due to aspiration. And there are ways. If you are aspirant enough, then you can find out the way. I think that is how it is there, and obviously media is doing this thing. And if you are interested to see the working more operandi between government and manpower agency, I think I deal a bit over there in paper as well. But how it is worked out over there is, for example, first of all, you have to have demand. There is manpower agency. They are registered according to law, and they have to deposit some amount as security, and obviously some other securities, bank guarantee or something like this. And once you register a manpower company, you try to deal with the migrant receiving country, and you find out somebody, agent over there, he or she try to let you have some demand, and that demand has to be verified by their own chamber of commerce in the receiving country. Then it has to be acknowledged by your Nepali embassy over there in the sending country. Then only that demand come to manpower company, and then they advertise saying that this kind of labor I need, and these are the method to recruit. And then they recruit, everything will be done, and eventually, before recruiting they go for the permission to recruit, and once they recruit and they have people, whatever demand states, and they go for they take passport from the client, and they go for the final approval, and that is how they pay 1,000 rupees and get. Entire process, there is no client and officer deal. Only manpower and government dealing is there. And then people, this government official suggestion is bullshit in a way. How could he say that corruption will be decreased if there is gap between this client and this thing? That is why I say so. So this is manpower phenomenon in a way. By and large, manpower does it. Government is happy to at least issue the sticker and take 1,000 rupees out of that. Obviously, passport is another issue. That is how it is being dealt. I don't know whether I could.
No, I mean, I think I guess my final question, I mean, is if there still is any, resistance on the ground, because I don't think you really touched that. I mean, what is the kind of, I mean, is there anybody challenging, I mean, these policies or the implementation of these policies? Because I guess the policies are fine. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, it's an improvement legally, I mean, a lot of things you're talking about, but the problem is the failure of implementation. So is there any bodies, any kind of associations, any kind of, I mean, you talk about the failure of addressing the root causes for why people actually want to leave in the first place. I mean, are there any organizations, associations addressing, I mean, both the fact that the root problems are not addressed and the fact that the ones laws are actually in place are not implemented? Because you could think, I mean, if you had a proper implementation of laws, I mean, that the ideological shift wouldn't make a difference when it comes to one regime being replaced by different regimes, if the laws were strong enough and if the implementation worked. So if you could just say something about if there is any kind of...
yes, in a way, you don't have this very institution just to oppose this very mechanism, but obviously there are research institutions and etc. It's growing up. For example, ILO is there, and ILO try to, but their very understanding is also, for example, my respondents say, for example, about this ILO and etc. Even this, what is it called? This migration, International Migration Issue, IMO or something like that. IOM. And their argument is, they push us to introduce this and that, but they won't push the sending country, receiving country region. That is how even this governance phenomena, as you were right, it is two-way. Even if you have proper channel over there in the sending country, if you end up with anything in the receiving country, if it is mess in receiving country, then that also hampers for the labor, and that is the case, and that is what my government officers are saying. And another thing, for example, even my researchers and those advocates for this pro-immigrant policy and etc., for them also, at least till today I could sense, is for example, they also buy this government idea. For example, this is issue of unemployment. I should be very emotional because one is losing employment if I am striking out. So this is the case. You see, that is how we understood. And that I think creates a lot many problems. If it is emotional issue, then we are emotional and we are flexible. But understanding it as emotional issue is problematic. I don't think that it is emotional because, as I narrated, there are a lot many options. But the sole aspiration is different than that of I understood. I think that is how it's being done.
Can I just ask a final question and then I need no, it's just when you talked about, because you don't really talk about that in the paper, but you talked about in the discussion, about the reluctance to interfere in the receiving societies out of some kind of inferiority complex. I was wondering, I mean, I thought that's quite interesting. I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about how you think around...
Yes, for example, you see, Nepal is having, as far as this labor sending is concerned, Nepal is having a couple of different experiences. For example, Nepal dealt with Korea and sent labor government to government kind of thing. ESP model is there. That is why government could identify people and send it to Korea. It is government through government channel only. Government dealing. Also, Nepal has experience to send labor to Israel in a different manner, and that is also till now people say that it worked well. And on the other, now we are dealing with this very unskilled labor migrants to Malaysia and Gulf countries. This is another experience. And while talking about this thing, for example, Qatar, and people talk about this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the sending and receiving countries, so that government can be engaged in a way. And if there is some mistreatment and etc., we can easily deal with the government. That is what is aspiration. That is what is kind of demand, I think, in both the countries. Even sending countries also feel, for example, ambassador and etc., quite often say that let's go for this and that. And my secretaries and etc., even ministers, former ministers I talk to, they say that no, we initiated this very process, but once I had to go out from this very post and no follow-up kind of thing or something like this. In a way, and then some people say that, quite often refer that, no, I can't, again this emotional issue comes, because by and large what they narrate, per day, per year, 400,000 plus labor, youth join labor market in Nepal. And we couldn't create this job. And they just refer this political transition, saying that we couldn't implement, we couldn't have fund and etc. That is why, at least in an ad hoc basis, in temporary basis, we have to tolerate whatever other governments say. That is why I think this kind of inferiority complex is there in the government side, policy making side, and that is why, as I told you, eventually this ambassador was right, but he was criticized by my government and even called back. And the next day, and very interestingly, my ambassador was called back because she made a statement over there in Qatar, and Qatar ambassador in Kathmandu was criticizing my ambassador being in Nepal. We didn't even bring this very discourse in Kathmandu, feeling like, no, if Qatar stops, then my youth will be in problem. I think that is how we are emotional, and we are even kind of, at least I could say that we are having inferiority complex. So that is what I think in the because as I told you, it's very rough draft, so I'll deal with it. Yeah.
Thank you. I really enjoyed reading it. And I really enjoyed the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Katarina, and thank you so much. And now do we have any questions from the floor here, or comments? Thoughts?
So you were there recently in Kathmandu. You must have some.
We talked about labor migration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean it's obviously migration is not only external migration but also internal migration is one big social issue that saturates society, public discourse and everything. It was obvious when we were discussing the social problems of Nepal today. But I didn't hear much about the governance sort of context, but more of you meet students at the university and it's interesting how everybody wants to get out, and not only the students but the teachers as well. Yeah. Everybody has that in their plan, And so why are you why did you sign up for this program? I was working with this master's program in social work, and so why are you here? Well, I just need a platform to get out, and the teachers, okay, so how will you manage? I was meeting this director of the program, and he says, well, my plan is to, within 2 years I would be. So and you have that sense in that sort of I don't know what to call it, but the atmosphere, it sort of saturates the entire city of Kathmandu. It's like I went with another person and she said it feels like Cambodia. Like everybody wants to get out. There's nothing here. We have to get out in order to survive. And so that's my perspective on the situation.
Can I respond?
Yeah, sure.
And yes, in a way, you see, there is link, and international migration is triggering point for the even internal migration.
Yeah.
once you are in Qatar, your first attempt would be to bring your family to the urban area, just to get rid of from the rural area. If you can manage, you bring them to Kathmandu. If not, at least in the local cities. So that is how I think, and obviously, yeah, we narrated earlier as well. Even in Denmark, one institution, out of 47 students are from Nepal. And this guy, whom we met yesterday, he was saying, why people are coming? And even if he tried to convey this message to his own colleagues over there, they won't believe. Oh, he's there, that is why he wanted to fool us. But obviously there must be some thing. That very strong aspiration, I think, how to deconstruct this is very challenging job in Nepal.
You talked about the different levels. I mean, how important it is to link the local level with the regional level and then the state level and the global level. I think that this is, I mean, about the global hierarchies, because we hear that in so many countries, and you think that just by my country, may it be Cambodia or Nepal or some African countries or wherever it is very low in the hierarchy. I want to be modern, I want to come to the center. I don't want to be here in the periphery any longer. So I think that the global context is very important. And when we talk about corruption, I think that we hear so many similar stories from all over the world that you have shown here. We hear it from many places in India and also from many places in other countries in the world. We hear it among migrants and we hear it among refugees, how they pay enormous sums of money. I heard one person who paid $10,000 to get a tourist visa to go to Greece from Saudi Arabia. To go to Greece. $10,000. I want to bring my baby also. Okay, sure, you can bring your baby if you pay another $10,000. That's not what a tourist visa is normally supposed to. I mean, so it's an enormous problem in the global world, I think, corruption and to exploit people with not so much power, so to say. So, then you also talked about the resistance on the ground and media, and why don't we hear more about this, and what can we, and do we have any organizations, for example, guest workers associates and things like that. I think that there are a lot of cultural issues here at stake, actually, and one, if you're a young person, you're very cool if you go abroad and work. You go to Denmark or you go to the United States or to Qatar or so, here is one who is a doer and he can really do this. It's very shameful for that person to come back and tell, I failed. I didn't get the job they promised me, they stole my money, they raped me, and it's a big shame to tell about your failure, and that's one reason for not going to media and for trying to silence it actually. And I heard many people in Sasnet say, well, I lost, they lose so much money and they lose their jobs and they sell their whatever they have out to rickshaws or something like that, and they borrow money and then they go abroad and it's a totally failure. And they say, this happened, but don't tell anybody. They don't want the neighbors to know, they try to. And they definitely wouldn't go to media. So I think that is and they also feel that, many of them feel that, well, I failed because there is something wrong with me, I was stupid. So there is also something about blaming the victim, I think. Yeah.
And that's similar tendency in Nepal also, like many migrants, like really they don't want to say what is the reality that they are having in the residing country. Rather they just even for students or everyone, like maybe not only like South migrants but even to the North migrants, like people don't really say what really they had to go through in that process, but like what are the positives only that will be told in Nepal, and then that will be sold to the youths in Nepal. So, and like their thinking would only be the the positives that you see like from your friends or like relatives who is abroad. So and that will like way more promote this migration tendency.
You're right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was taking some kind of survey in Qatar. One of my friends is staying there, and I asked him. I made a questionnaire and sent him the questions, and then I did it like for 10 or 15, just to check it out because I'm doing business conflict studies in Malmö University, and what I found was like even they were saying like their salary is the amount of salary they said is like beyond expectation. I mean, all of them, they really have a good salary and everything. They just don't want to say they are having problem in their salary and facing discrimination or something like that, and they feel kind of shame to expose themselves.
Yeah, that is the cause. Yeah. Only
And,
if you have good history,
yeah.
you can sell out.
Yeah.
If you have bad fortune, this is my fortune. Yeah, I can't sell it. That is what is saying, and that is very interesting. For example, 2011, I visited Japan, and Japan obviously being a OECD or developed country, we have our youth have very strong aspiration, and I was there in a conference in Tokyo, and I tried to stay together with my Nepali workers over there for 2 nights, and initially they said that please come to us and stay together, and I even denied. Ambassador was known to me, and even he was asking me to come. I didn't go to embassy and come to them until 9 o'clock in the evening. They didn't entertain as if, and I entertained in a way that they were kind of reluctant to take me to their home. My luggage was put there in a restaurant. It was a Nepali dance restaurant, and then I was thinking what to do. Maybe go to embassy or something like this. And eventually one guy came and said that let's go, sir. And then while going, he was saying, sir, I was very shy to take you to our room because in Nepal we are treated as if we are very good honor and etc. And we could treat well our friends and etc. We could send good money back. But if you see our room, then you will be surprised. That is why we want to take you to my room. That is what was literal experience to me as well. So these are the cases, and you are right. Even you are here as a student, and whatever problem you face, if you share this problem with them, first you won't share because you feel shy, and you will be scolded by them. Then why you went? That is why you are shy not to sell it. I understand. Number two, even if you tell them, then they feel like you are there. Eventually, you are there, and you are trying to stop us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is what would be their say. So that's very, very, very difficult to
convey.
convey.
Like it's compared to the maybe it's like 5, 7 years or 10 years before, and then right now. Like, but recently the tendency of the returning is also increasing, I guess, like compared to the past. Like recently I see some news reports and a little bit of things, and like I find like many youths like these days like are even returning as well. So there is kind of some positives as well to not only like the outflow, but there is like inflow of the migrants as well. Well, I don't have like particular, I don't know, but like that one was my kind of, and then also one thing can be like the political situation in the country. Like we are still in a transition phase, and then the youths are not really sure that what it leads to. Like there might be like in 2-3 years time there might be a stability in the country, and then like people will be secure kind of like thing, but in other sense like but it's still fragile, and then they don't know what happens, like there might be a civil war again, or like what it might lead to. So that one would also be a reason behind contributing to migration in my opinion.
couple of,
Because
I think
before,
very
like,
few
previously,
number.
we could experience like the Chinese and Indian thing as well. Like there was a lot of outflow before, like, but recent time the country is stable and then like the economy is booming. So right these days we see like a lot of the migrants, Chinese and Indian migrants, they are returning, and then so in my opinion, like if it turns that to be the case in Nepal, then there might be like fewer migrants that would like go abroad, or like even those who are abroad like would love to return. Or
Yeah, I guess it all depends on time and what type of policy is going around, you know. So if it was 15 to 20 years before, aspirant Nepali who has actually sold out the same dream towards a new generation of his brothers or siblings is totally different. If I have my cousins who are already an engineer, can work as an engineer in UK today is because he migrated to UK as a student very long time before. But right now if I plan to go and migrate, the UK has policy for me to return back after my master's. So, and that type of policy was not there before. Or like, you know, if you had stayed there in UK for 5 years, 10, then you could have applied for working visa there. So these type of policies not there. So it's so much of a dynamics that's going there, one. Secondly, there's also probably could be an economic dynamic that's going inside the receiving country itself in terms of remittances and how the old migrants are already taking advantage of the newcomers and a set of very new economics going on over there and a complete different story as what is going around there. That could also change so much of things. And the same thing is happening probably in the changing, you know, when this technology has overridden with information. This has actually increased the imagination and dream and aspiration of the people of the remote villages. Where in remote areas you can see, you can have a television set which you probably didn't have before 15 to 20 years. Now you can see what is there in the world and how you are being deprived of. And that image actually probably makes you, you know, even feel to go and explore other different places and whatever the cost it may be.
Yeah. That is why I think this very new technology, if government try to deconstruct this very strong space, I think it is very easy because many people, for example, if story of Dinesh is circulated, as I told you, he would be happy to return back because he is saving less than 200 Qatari riyal now, and if he is given this opportunity to come back, he will, the next day he will fly back. But there is no option. That is why he will try to explore whatever possibility. And then, you know, I think you are right. A few number of people try to go back, and these are by and large very high professionals only. You are talking about returning back to India and